All right, welcome back. We are COMP1011, that's Advanced OOP with Java in the summer 2022 semester at Georgian College. And it's week 2, part 2 of our broadcast and recording. And the last recording, what we did was we were talking about, we kind of did a review of JavaFX, and now we're going to get right back into where we left off before the recording, where we added in some files on the project side. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to where we were. We were here, and I pushed this up to GitHub. Remember that on GitHub, what I did was I pushed it up here to COMP1011 M2022 ICE2. That's where it is. All my files are here. The add command. Yeah, sorry, I'll add that in. So typically what it is if you want to do, so sorry, some people are asking for the commands for GitHub, by hand. If you want to do the commits by hand or the commands by hand, it's git add dot, and then git commit -m, and then your message, whatever your message is. If whatever the message is like, if you added a feature or you fixed a bug or you added some files, then it would be whatever your message would change to whatever you've done, all right? And then you can do the rest, the other 3 commands that we did earlier. Git push would be the next one, right? Git push is after that, right? Because you're going to push it up to your remote. Okay, so let's continue with the stuff that we've done from last time. So again, we started off with very basic things, and we added in a distance fxml file, and I want to open this up with Scene Builder. So I'm going to go to Scene Builder now. Let's do that. And in Scene Builder, what I want to do is I want to click Open Project like we did before. And again, what we can do is we can keep this window open. If I go back to here, I want to right click here and go copy path or reference. I want to copy the absolute path, this part here. And then what I can do is I can go back to Scene Builder and just paste it in. So edit address, paste, right? And then when I do that, I can go into source, main, resources, CA, Georgian College, COMP1011, and click on calculate Vector2D distance fxml this time and press open. And when we do that, we're going to see a bigger, kind of object here like we had before. Okay. So are you with me? Are you with me? Do you have this open? Again, we're going to switch between Scene Builder and this. If you're with me, just let me know. Yep. Nitin says yes. Okay, we got a couple of thumbs up from Guillermo. Thank you, Guillermo. Awesome. And Sarah. Again, Maro. Thank you. All right, so I see that some of you are with me. Manwinder, thank you. And the reason why I'm asking, guys, is because I want you guys to be able to keep up when we do this so that it saves steps for you guys to do your in-class exercise that's due on Saturday, right? I don't want you to, have to watch this video again and again. I'm hoping that it'll be good enough. Will be like one time, and then you'll be able to kind of put together your video for your in-class exercise. Also, remember, if you have questions, I'm available Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. pretty much to 9 p.m. for you guys on Discord. So you can always connect with me on Discord if you have a problem or question, and I'm pretty good at answering during the week. Weekends, Saturday and Sunday, you won't find me. But at least during the week, you'll be able to get me. You can also send me an email, but I respond faster to Discord than email. All right. So now that we have this, remember what I want to do. I want to add in, I want the user to enter in some data, and I want to be able to respond with a simple calculation. The data that I want the user to add in is a Vector2D, 2 Vector2Ds, okay? So if you think about this, I need to organize myself here on the screen pretty nicely. Now I could do this. I could put in, I'm going to go on the left here on the controls. I could choose a label. Let's start with a label. And I can drag and drop the label. And by the way, it's kind of absolute positioning. That's what it does. It positions the label exactly where I want it on the screen. And if you notice on the right-hand side where it says properties, well, it if I just put the label here, and let's say, for example, this is my Vector2D, my first Vector2D, or I don't know, the origin, the start location, if you will, or whatever, the source and destination, or start and destination, whatever you want to call it. Those are the two things I want. We can change the name of this stuff. So we can change, instead of label, we can change it so that this is the, the start Vector2D, the starting Vector2D. Let's call it the starting Vector2D. There it is. And you can see that it does that. And if I want this thing to change, then I can go File, Save. And if I save my file, then notice where it says calculate Vector2D distance.fxml. That's where it saved it. If I go back to my files, back to IntelliJ, right, you can see that there exactly is a label, right, that has that detail. Take a look at that. Look how that changed, right? That's pretty cool, right? So all that is exactly as it should be, right? Now, I'm mentioning this to you because I want you guys to consider what is going on here. One thing is my preferred height is 400 by 600. That's the size of my screen. I can make my screen height any way I want. I don't want to do it here. I want to use Scene Builder to do all that for me because it's just a little easier. But I could do it from here if I wanted to. Okay, now let's try it. So if I press play, right, if everything goes well, then I should see my new, oh man, what the heck? How come this is coming up? Well, remember guys, what we did. Sure, we created our, our new controller, but we also have this hello application. Remember those three files, the controller, the application, and the FXML document, right? We have our FXML document and the controller, but we don't have an application that links to any of these things. So here in hello application, let's rename this thing. So we'll right click on hello application, right? And what I want to do is I want to rename, so refactor, rename, and I want to rename this thing instead of hello application, I want to rename it as main, okay, and refactor. So now it's called main, okay? And if I double click on this, you'll see that the class is also renamed to main. Look at that, okay? And it says main class get resource, but this isn't the resource that I want. Hello view FXML, that's not what I want, right? I want this to change so that it reflects what I'm doing with my structure. So this here, I'm going to change this so that it reflects this new thing, which is calculate, you have to get this right, calculate Vector2D distance, right, .fxml. Notice that what I had before, I'm just going to copy this again. So I'm just going to copy this so I can show you. So I'll copy this. If I undo, I had this before, right? Calculate Vector2D distance, right? Calculate dash Vector2D dash distance dot fxml. It has to be exactly this way, all right? And then, you know what? Our title for our window, the stage, remember, is an analogy for our window. Let's set the title to calculate Vector2D distance. That's the title of our page or our window, okay? The size of our window says it's supposed to be 320 by 240. 320 by 240. That is the size that we're loading. But in yet our FXML document, if you look here, I'm going to save this, by the way. Save. If I go to my FXML document, it says its preferred height is 400 by 600. We got to change this up so it matches in a second. But if I run this now again, if I run my application one more time, now, if we're lucky, we should see something that looks like this. But take a look at this. It says, warning, loading FXML document with JavaFX API version 18 by Java runtime of version 17. Because remember, I started mine with version 17, but my JavaFX API is version 18. It's okay if I did this, right? And remember, what if I wanted to change my JavaFX version mid-flight? Can I do that? Well, here inside of my project, I can edit my configuration if I really wanted to. So if I had Java 17 and I need to use Java 18, right? Then I could select an alternate or download something else eventually and modify it. Here, I could do that, right? I'm not going to do that at this time. I'm just going to accept that the way it is. It's going to be working just fine. Okay, I'm not going to really worry so much about it, but I could, right? And like I said, when I ran it, even though it gave me that warning, it still printed out my starting Vector2D, and it did change this. It did adhere to my screen, but the problem is it's not what you see is what you get, because in my scene builder, the reason why it looks so big is because I'm seeing the whole 400 by 600. So I can either change this window, right? Or I can change this window. It's one or the other, because it's not what you see is what you get right now. Does that make sense? How do I know that? Because anchor pane in my FXML document says 400 and 600, but in my main, it shows 320 by 240. That's a difference. So if I was going to make it the same, let's say, for example, the same as my FXML document, 400 by 600, then I would have to change it here or the other way. Let's just change this here in my main, 400 by 600. If I did that and changed it and then ran it again, you're going to see that I'm going to be just peachy. It's going to run, it should run exactly the same, except I did it the other way around. Let's try that again. 600 and 400. I'll be okay. Woohoo! Right? Mistakes happen. Let's try that again. There we go. That's what it looks like. Because if you look at this, and if you look at FXML, now it should be pretty much the same. See that? Look how they're kind of, it's resizable, but they're kind of right on top of each other. They kind of look almost exactly the same now. All right, that's number one. So one thing is make sure they match, those two things. However you do it, whether it's one size or the other. I'm going to keep mine 600 by 400 just to make it easy. We'll do that in a second. I'll show you that on the other side. But yes, we do want to disable that in a second. Next, I want to destroy any files I don't need. I don't need my hello view FXML anymore. Let's get rid of it. Delete. Okay, so we don't need that hello view.fxml. Don't need that. And I don't need my hello controller. So go to my hello controller and delete that too, please. Delete. Okay, delete. Okay. And now that I've deleted those files, I also want to add in my Vector2D and my utility class, okay, from my previous project. Now remember, what I did online with you guys, simpler way to do that is, if you go back to my previous project from ICE1, you have access to both of those two files, the utility and the Vector2D Java file, right? So what I could simply do is make a brand new file called Vector2D.java and then copy paste. I think that's the easiest way to do it for now. I could also include it, but I'm not going to take that time to do that right now. So I'm going to right click and add a new Java class. I'm going to call this Vector2D. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to go to GitHub from my last repository here. This is my last repository. I want to click raw and I want to select my entire file from last time up here and paste it in. Just replace everything except for, oops, let's try that again. I don't want to have, my previous one didn't have my, my package, which is cool. I don't want to replace my package. This package I want to leave alone, but I want to change everything here. This part I want to replace, which is now, that's the class. And I'm going to give you the link for that. So this link is the one that you can use to copy and paste. You'll get right to that link, right to my Java class, right? So you don't have to, kind of type it yourself or try and find it anywhere. Next, I want to do the same thing with my utility class, right? So again, I want to go out to my source from last day, go to my utility class, go to raw. Okay, this is the link. So here's the link for it. And I want to make my raw class here, kind of a copy in here. Oops, not wrong one. This one. Let's make another class. I'll get again. I'll make a new Java class. I'll call this utility, right? And just like we did before, I want to go back to here. I want to copy all of this, go back to my IntelliJ and paste it here. But please make sure you do not remove the package name up here on the top for both of them. Save. Now that I've got both of those two, I've added two new classes, utility and vector, and I cleaned up my files. Time for a commit. Okay, so this time, again, you can do it here. You can see that these are all the things that have changed, right? Or you can use your terminal window down here. So the terminal window, we don't care about notifications. We just care about the terminal window. So on the terminal window, these are the following commands you can use. Git add dot. That adds everything, right? Git commit -m, and we'll say added Vector2D and utility classes. And then I can do a git push. So that is the command line version of what I did earlier with this and last week when I did this. Okay, so you can do it on the command line as well. So the commands are git add dot, git commit -m, and I say something like it added utility and Vector2D classes, something like that will be okay. And then git push. Those are the commands. Okay. All right, so now that I did that, if you look up online, and if I go back to my repository, which is right here, this is ICE2, you can see that in my repository, in my source main, under Java, I have my classes, my utility class, and my Vector2D class from last time. Good. I have all that good stuff. Excellent. So I needed those because without those, I can't really do the calculation, right? I can't do the calculation. I'm just preparing myself. Back to scene builder. Okay, I got to fix my my user interface, right? So in my user interface, I mean, this is nice, but there's no structure. And it'd be nice if I had a text box as well. Like really what I want is, I mean, sure, I could add a text field. So I could add a text field that's this. Here's my text field. And I could add two parts to it, right? I could have that there is an X and a Y coordinate. So I probably need a couple more labels, right? I probably need a couple more labels, an X label. So a label that says X. Oops, wrong one. Let's grab the label up here. I'll be okay. Woohoo! Here's my label. And this label will say X. That's all the label will say. And maybe X and a colon. Like so. And this label here, I want to put it right here, right next to this thing. And I want to duplicate this. Let's see how I can duplicate this, right? So I want to kind of duplicate them. And so let's move it over here for a second. So undo. So I want to duplicate these. How do I duplicate these two things? So I can duplicate them by dragging and dropping them. So here's my text field, and here's my label, right? There's my label for the X. Typically what I like to do is put them in order that I see them from left to right. So it doesn't really matter here on the hierarchy because they're the same level. But if I have them here, and if I Control C, so I want to kind of select these two things and Control C, Control V, then I can have copies of them, right? So there's my copy. So I can put that next to it like this. I could do this because I want X and Y coordinates in here, right? Okay, I could do that. But that can be very hairy. How does it line up properly? Blah, blah, blah. It doesn't look very good, all right? So instead of this, what I could add in is a container of some kind. So under containers in the top left, you can see that there's a bunch of different ones. One of them that I like to use is a grid pane. So here's a grid pane. So I can put a grid pane in here. And the grid pane is like a table, right? And notice I have starting Vector2D plus an X and some kind of entry, a Y, and some kind of entry. And I want to put them in their own grids, as their own cells, if you were, to keep really super organized, right? And so what I can do is I can take this label, right? And if I want to put it inside of the grid, I can cut it, go to my grid pane, and could I not double click on the cell? Is that possible that I can double click on the cell and paste it? The answer is no, right? So how do I keep those two things up? You guys have used JavaFX before. How do I add Vector2D, right? How do I do this? If I copy it, go back to the grid pane, and can I right click and paste it? Does it work? Well, no, I can't do that. How do I add inside of this cell? Man, I want to kind of put it in right here. How do I do that? Well, remember that the grid pane itself, right, on the right-hand side here, which is interesting, right, it has a layout. Okay, so here's the layout. And it has scale and all that kind of stuff. What I want to do is I want to put this in as a child object, but it's got to be inside of the grid pane, right? That's what I wanted to put it in. So what else does the grid pane have? If I right click, what I want to do is, it's almost like I want to wrap it in. I want to wrap this in the grid. That's what I want to do. I want to put this part inside of here. How do I add a control in here? Do I have to drag and drop it right in here? Well, let's try it by drag and dropping that control in here first. Let's say, for example, if I had a text, if I had in the controller, on the controls, if I had a text field here, let's say a text field, and in my grid pane, here my grid, I want to drag and drop my text field in the grid pane. How do I do that? How do I, drag it in there? What do I do? You guys have done this before, you said. So how do I do it? How do I make a child object in my grid pane? What do I do? Because the grid pane itself, I mean, really at the end of the day, right? I want to have a bunch of labels on one side in here, right? So that's what I want. Notice if I can click on these things, right, to give you hints. I can click on these things. I can add rows and add columns, right? And I can select the parent. I can go to grid pane. I can do these things. I can wrap in. What can I do? Oh, here's something that's paste into. That's pretty cool. I can paste into that. So I can paste into the grid pane. So, okay, let's try that again. So I'm going to grab that text, this text object, this label right here. I want to copy it. So let's copy it first, see if it works. Go to my grid pane, and then I want to paste into. That's what I want. I want to be able to paste into. Hey, oh man, what happened? How come my grid pane, it looked like it was there, but now it's not there anymore? Well, it actually is there. It's just that I need to organize it a little bit better. You can adjust this, the pane itself, the grid pane, to make it as wide as you want, right? And I can adjust the sizes of anything I want to put in here. So this is my starting Vector2D, right? And then I'll have another column for my X. I'm just using this as a template. I guess I want to copy this. Oops. I want to copy this, go back to my grid pane, and then kind of paste it in, paste into. Oh man, well, how come it went there? I didn't want that to go there. I want it to go into somewhere else. Well, take a look what it says. It says row index 0, 0. That's not what I want. It's going to be 0, 1 for the label. So that column index is 1. Oop. If I can type in 1, not 10, not 110. 1, right? And you can see that is now pasted in there. So that was interesting. So I can paste it in row and column wise. Okay, cool. But I don't need all that space. And I do need another, I want to insert in here another column after. So I want to make another column after. There we go. And again, I can add padding. So I can add spaces like this. I can adjust what I want. And for my column, what I can do, it tells me the width and the height, right? And my layout. Now here's my horizontal alignment. I want to make it so that the horizontal alignment is centered, right? So that it's centered inside my pane. I could also make it so that the horizontal alignment for my entire row, right, is right. So it's on the right side like we had before. So kind of like I can move it like this, and then just matching what I had here, I can have my horizontal alignment in here. Okay, so that's kind of where the starting 2D is going to be. And then over here, I can put in my my text fields. I can grab that text field, copy it, and I can go back to my grid pane and then, like I said, paste into, but I have to specify that the text field is at 0, 2. So where it says column index on the right, I can go to 2 and press enter. Okay, well, my text field is pretty darn big, right? So I don't need this thing to be so huge. I want it to be smaller. So I want to be able to grab the text field. So let's make my grid pane a little bit bigger. So again, I'm going to click on my grid pane now. And I want to make this a little bit wider. So here I'm going to just add a little bit of space. You can see that that changes the size. And if you notice, if I just go right here, I can kind of increase the size of my width of the whole thing, right? But I want to make this text field smaller. So notice it says preferred width is 48, right? And it says min width and min height. You can specify, it says use computed size, or you can specify the size that you want, right? So I don't want my computed size. You can say use prefer size, which is better, right? There's use prefer size. Min width and min height, I can do that, right? So use prefer size. There we go. And now what I can do is I can adjust the size manually to whatever I want. So something like a 50, you can see on the top right there, it's 50, around 50 wide. Lots of space there for what I want to put in there, I think. And if it's not good enough, we'll know, right? So that's the X coordinate. And let's add another column after, and we'll make this the label for the next one. So I'll grab this one, copy it, go back to this grid pane and paste it, paste into. We'll paste this one into 0, 3, right? There's that one. Just like I did before, what I want is for the horizontal element to be right. And what I want to do is I want to kind of make it so that this one is a little bit closer, tighter in there. And just like we did before, I want to make this one kind of a little bit closer in there too. We need to adjust this. Let me undo that change. We'll talk about this in a second, how to adjust these things so that you can see the width of the column. So notice that the width of the column, I can prefer the width. I can use a computed size, as an example if I want to, or I can use an actual number. We'll probably use an actual number as we go forward. But let's continue here for a second. And let's add another one. Let's add another column. So again, I'm going to click on this thing. I'll say, and I want to, so to the column itself, when I click on the column, I want to add a column after. So you can see now that my grid pane is 5 by 3 so far. So if I click on my grid pane, you can see that it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Where 4, let's give some space to this one. Where 4, I want to add in another text field. So I want to grab this text field, copy it, and I want to go back to my grid pane, and I want to go paste into again. Okay, and then I want to change the size or the position to 0, 4. Okay, so 0, 4. There it is. And just like I did before, I don't want it to computer size. I want preferred size. And what I can do for my preferred size is actually type it in this time instead of calculating it by myself. All right. That doesn't look right. This doesn't quite look exactly how I want it to, does it? I can make this larger. My house is burning down. No problem. I can make this larger, but one thing you can do is you can specify the preferred width and height. It looks like my preferred width should be about 110 for this one. But for this one, maybe it shouldn't be 110. I made it 50 for this column, but maybe we can make it something like 100. So I'll say that my preferred width is 100, okay? And my maximum width is 100. I can match those up, so my preferred width and my maximum width are both 100. And that is the size. Now, reason why I made it 100 is because what if I want to make this grow? If I wanted to make it preferred width is 50 maximum width is 100, then it'll look just like this, exactly how I had it before. Okay. And the same thing goes here. So for my X, what about for my X? My X, I don't need a lot of space here, but you know what? Maybe a preferred width of 25 with a maximum width of 50, just to give myself some leeway in terms of making how I want it to be, okay? So that's it. And then the important thing is the minimum. So you can also specify the minimum width. Some say, well, the preferred width and the minimum width can be the same, 25, right? Same thing with this one. The preferred width and minimum width, preferred width is 110, minimum width is 110. And maybe maximum width would be 150. Maybe it'll grow maximum to 150 if I wanted to do that, right? So starting vector, this one is 25, 25, 50. The middle one is 10, 50, 100, right? And this one should be the same as this one, right? Which would be, like we did before, 25, 25, 50. So 25, 25, 50, let's do that. 25, 25, 50, max, right? And this one here, this one would be the same as this one, which is 10, 50, 100. Okay, so 10, 50, 100. Now, one thing that we did here that was different is this one here is left-centered or inherit. We can make this center if you really want to, or you can make it left so it kind of hugs the other one. And if we did left for this one, we might as well do left for this one. So now we can see that it's going to look kind of the same. And if we go away from it, you can see that it's more, there's more structure involved. Now, if you don't like this, if you think this is too wide, or if you think that there's too much room here, you know, as an example, let's say you want to make this a little bit tighter instead of 110, 110, then you can do that. You can say, well, let's try another number. Let's try so we can make it something smaller, right? Something like this, like 95, 95, right? But be careful when you do that. Okay, you modify everything else when you modify one thing. But one thing to note is, again, if I kind of zoom in here and do that, maybe, you know, something like 95 would be okay. Let's undo those changes. Back to where we were before. So for this one, instead of being 110, 110, 50, let's make it so like 95, 95, something that looks like that. And again, you can see that there's a lot of space between these things because this one and this one, I can highlight both columns by control clicking, right? Because the maximum width here is 50, it allows me to go that far. If I wanted to make the max width for both only 25, everything's 25, it'll shrink exactly to what I want it to be. So you can have all these things the exact same if you really want to, okay? Same thing for these ones. If you said that, well, the max width is never going to be more than 95, well, you can do that. You can say everything is the same, the exact same, or you wanted the max width to be 100, right? That's okay. Whatever that max width is going to be is what it's going to be. Same thing with this one. This one, we said the max width is 100 and the minimum width is 10, right? Maybe 100 is too much, so we can control click both those ones and say, well, you know, maybe something like 75 is okay. And again, you can see how that changes everything. And so it's a little bit better. Okay, we don't need these anymore, right? Or do we? Let's get back to this. So how about if I want to copy this? Is there a way of copying this row, you know? And it says move row, but there's no way of copying the row, right? Well, first of all, let's save this thing, save it, because we want to always save our stuff, because when we're doing a user interface, you know, it's pretty, you know, anything can happen, right? So first thing is we save everything. Next thing we want to do is I want to, you know, kind of do the same thing in another grid, right? So another row, right? So again, just like I did before, and we might want to test it as well, but we could do the same thing. I want to kind of copy these three things. So can I copy this cell, copy, and can I paste it in there? Paste. And the answer is not really. Undo. I can't really copy this entire row. It doesn't work that way, right? I can move row below. I can do that. I don't want to copy it here. I want to kind of have a row in the middle. This row height, see where it says prefer height and minimum height? I can specify whatever height I want. It says minimum height is 10, preferred height is 30, and it says max height, use computed size. I'm going to say use prefer size, whatever that is. And I'm going to say that the max height is 10. And you can see that I can squeeze that in to give my rows a little bit of separation, but not too much. Okay, so I can do that. Almost like padding, if you will. Old school. All right, so I want to do the same thing. So I want to kind of, copy paste all of these things, but I want to do the same thing. Is there another way to do it? If I copied all of these, copy it, and if I kind of said paste into, if I did it again down here, notice it's exactly the same. They're kind of on top of each other. So what I can do is quickly do the same thing as I did before. Notice it's like label, 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 text field, label, text field. Well, I can do the exact same thing, except for this time I can just do it numerically. So I know that's going to be, the row index is going to be 2 for all of them. So this is 2, 0. The next one is going to be 2, 1. So 2, 1. The next one is going to be 2, 2, 2. So 2, 2, 2. And the next one is going to be 2, 3. So 2, 3. And the next one is going to be 2, 4. So 2, 4. There we go. So now we can see that that is in there. I don't need this anymore, so I can get rid of these. These are just my, kind of my examples of what I had. So I've got my starting. I don't want to make this starting. I want to call this one, the one on 0, 2. I want to make this one, so I will go to properties here, and we'll call this the ending vector. So ending. There we are. So there's a starting vector, and if I can spell ending properly, that would be good. There's the ending vector. Ending. Come on. Doesn't like me typing I anyway. Ending vector. There we go. Woohoo! I did it. And now that I have those two in there, the starting vector and the ending vector, I need some kind of calculate and result. And I also need some kind of title, which would be nice. So let's put a title in there. So again, I'm going to get so above the grid pane, so that I can kind of close up the grid pane. And what I can do is I can go to label and double click. If I hit the anchor and double click on label, it's going to put the label where I want to put it. So I can put the label kind of somewhere here. And again, we can style it the way we want, but for now, I'm just going to make it so it's bigger. So instead of like being 12, I'll make it something like, I don't know, 36 to make it nice, bigger, I mean. I don't know if it's nicer. And we'll call this something that it says, calculate Vector2D distance. Something that makes more sense. And if it's too big, I'll know, because it's going to be like way too big for my size. You can see that that's what it's going to be. Right, so this is my title, calculate Vector2D distance. Right, that's it. One thing I can do, right, is content display my alignment, where it says center left, right, as an example of my label. I can make it center. That's the actual label itself. But there's no really alignment in the pane, and it's not even centered on the screen because, well, I don't have anything like that for my anchor. My anchor pane right now, as an example, has its own alignment if I want to. But the anchor pane is very, very simple, right? It's kind of like the root control, the root container for everything else. Okay. All right, cool. So calculate Vector2D distance. That's what it's going to be down here. And then what I want to do is maybe it's a little bit too big. What do you think? You guys think it's too big? I think it's too big. Maybe 30. Might be better. There we go. I can use my guides to help me guide it to the middle. Maybe, oops. And maybe move my grid pane a little bit as well. So maybe move my grid pane around. So I want to move my grid pane. Notice how moving my grid pane isn't so easy, right? So I can move this around, but moving my grid pane around, well, I can resize my grid pane. no problem. Like I can resize this one so it fits, so it's kind of like in here. But how do I move my grid pane? Like how do I, move it around? How do I do that? I can move things around inside my grid pane, but it just kind of goes where it's going to go. All right, so that's kind of disadvantage of how I'm doing this right now. All right, so that's one thing I can have here. I want a button, so let's put and let me just close this up. So I want my label to appear before, up here, there it is. And then I want a button to appear below it. So here's my button, so I'll double click on the button. And I'll take that button and I'll put it somewhere down here. And I'll call it calculate distance. Calculate. Right? And when we click the calculate button, we want the distance to be in here in the result. Right? That's what we want. So some kind of result text box will be here. So let's get another text box. And here's a text field. Oops, not a text area. Text field, undo. Text field. And I want this text field to appear kind of next to it. I mean, I can probably flow these into my grid, yeah? Because I'm kind of making it appear this way. How do I combine cells? Because that's something I'd like to do. I like this to span multiple cells. Here, if I click on one of these things that's inside, right? Well, you can see inside of not my property, but my layout. If you look at my layout, it says row span or column span. So you can actually row span and column span stuff if you want to. Okay, if that's true, then I want to add in another row below, okay? And maybe another row below that. Row below, there we go. And then, okay, cool, I like that. My rows have been added in. And, well, I want to, just like this one, because if you look at the properties for this one, the minimum height and the preferred height is 10. And here, the minimum height and the preferred height is 10 and 30. I want to make these two the same. So 30 and 30. So I want always for them to be the same. And same thing with this one. This one should be 30 and 30. And this one should be 10 and 30 or 10 and 10. Let's say 10 and 10 to make this the exact same size. And I want to take this one, I want to cut it out. And this time that we know it works, I want to go in here and paste into. And I want to, of course, paste this button into 4, 0. So 4, row 4, column 0. There we go, calculate. And I want to take this, right, cut it. And I'm going to go back to this thing. And I'm going to paste it in here, paste into. But this one is going to go in row, column 2, 4, 2 is where it's going to go. Paste into. And it's going to go, row 4, column 2, okay? And I'm going to span this. It says row span 1, but column span 3, like so. So you can see that way it takes up the entire column if I want to, okay? Now it doesn't quite look right, but I could do that. So now I have my calculate and I have my text field, okay? And I need a result. The result is this is the result, this is the calculate button, and this is pretty cool. One thing I could do is, well, I know that my grid pane and my label are kind of on top of each other, and I could select both of those two things and right click, and then I can wrap them in a V-box, which will kind of align them together like this, which kind of makes it a little bit nicer to look at. And now the V-box, right, itself, this V-box here, if I click onto it, you can see that it's centered within my screen. Okay. Save. It doesn't do anything, but what I want to do now is test it to see if it works well inside of IntelliJ. So going back to IntelliJ, I want to press play, and I'm going to run a little overtime today, guys. And if everything goes well, then I should see this. Okay. My calculate button doesn't do anything. And if I type in some stuff, right, as an example, it allows me to type in whatever I want when I calculate. So that's kind of the thing that we don't have. We don't have any kind of, validation in any way. And nothing really works right now. Okay, let's push this up to GitHub. So again, in the terminal, I'm going to say, just like we did before, git add dot, git commit -m, and I'm going to add in, I'll say added basic UI for basic UI, which is what I kind of did, and then git push. So now you have all that up on GitHub. So again, very, very simple is what I did. I didn't do anything different. There's like a few things here. I don't even need this big space that I have here for my user interface. I could make my user interface smaller. I'm not going to, just to make it simple like this, right? And what you see is what you get. When I press play, you can see that I certainly get that screen popping up exactly the way I designed it in Scene Builder. Okay. Cool. Now I need to wire it up. That's my next thing. How do I wire up my scene? Well, a lot of this is going to be generated by Scene Builder itself. This is an amazing thing. So one thing that we can do is if I have this, and notice here I have some preview, and I have an arrange, and I have a modify, and I have an insert, and I have a view. So if I go to the view menu for Scene Builder, and if I scroll down to where it says show sample controller skeleton, this is a beautiful thing, guys. It does code generation. Take a look. Oh man, what the hell? How come I didn't do it? Right? I want my code skeleton to be all inside here. Well, we don't have anything here for my code skeleton yet because guess what? None of these have any kind of IDs. So the things that I need ID for are the things that are going to change. I need an ID for this, 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 and I need an action for the button. So let's do the IDs first. So the ID for this one is my starting vector X, or we can call this X1, right? So the way to get that is to go to code. Under FX ID, we can call this whatever we want. I'm going to call this X1, right? I'm going to click on this one, and then I'm going to call this X2. Sorry, that should have been called Y1. I'll be okay. Y1, and I'm using caps for this just to make it easier to see. This is X2. This is Y2. And if you really want to, some people do this. For X1, they type it something like X1 TextField. So they kind of type in X1, So for this one here, they type in X1 and then TextField. I know it's not allowing me to do that, but that's okay because, and the reason why is because it's taking my shortcuts. That's what it is, right? So it doesn't allow me to type it in after I've typed it in, but that's okay because I can just modify it later. X1, and I want to start type in text escape. I need to type escape, okay, and press enter, X1 text field. And same thing with this one. I could do the same thing. If I start typing, and if I type in Shift T, escape, if you type escape, then it'll escape out of your, it has shortcuts it's trying to do for me, but I don't want them to be there, so that's why I'm escaping. I can do the same thing, I just escape, and then type in text fields. And then Y, escape, and then text fields. A lot of times this is good because it tells you what those are, the types. Here, it's going to be the results text field. So again, I want to click on the actual text field itself, and I want to type in result text field. Okay, that's what it's going to be called. So I have these, and I want to make my calculate button have an action, but I don't have an action for it yet. Let's save this. So file, save, okay? And what I also want to do is, again, going back to view, I want to show sample controller skeleton. And if I do that now, it has this, way more than I had before. Take a look. Right? Nice? That's cool. What about if I added a button on action? So on action, I want to calculate Vector2 distance. So I'll say, now usually what I do is I kind of mention like this, say on calculate button clicked. That's what I call it, like this. And then on calculate button clicked is the action I want to use. Now, again, if I save everything, save, and if I go back to view and I go to show sample controller, it'll have that little event all ready for me, which is pretty cool. Okay, guys, this is awesome. Now that I've got this little thing, and again, I got it from view, show sample controller skeleton. After I've got all those things done, I can copy all, so I can kind of select everything, copy it, right? And then I can go back to IntelliJ here. And if I go to the controller, remember that empty controller class I had before here? I can just replace everything except for my package. So I can kind of do one of these and paste. And you can see now that I have all of those pieces in there, right? I don't need my duplicate package. Save. So this is really cool because what it does is it links all of those text fields. Look at what it says, text field. Here's the result text field, X1 text field, X2 text field, Y1 text field, Y2 text field. I got all those things, right? And what I want to do with this event is when I click the on calculate button, when I click the calculate button, I want something to be done, okay? So what can I do, guys? Now, what is the next thing that I want to do? What do you think is the next step? I need your help. You guys are the last people that are here, and I want to finish this up for today. I want to view the result, but I can't view the result. I have to actually do the result. I have to do the calculation here. So the great thing is I have the utility class. Remember the utility class? And I have vectors, right? So I can do the utility class very, very simply, right? I could create two vectors first to hold the data if I really want to. And it's good practice to do so. So for example, I could say Vector2D, right? I can call this, point 1 is equal to a new Vector2D. And I'm going to use the new Vector2D, field like this, where I'm going to take the data from my X1 text field, X2 text field, Y1 and Y2 text field. They're strings, and I need to convert them somehow into, I want to convert them into floats, right? Because that's what I need them to be. So how do I do that? How do I do my conversion, right, from one thing to the other thing? What do I do? What are your thoughts on this one? So I want to convert it. How do I convert it from, from my string? It's got to be a float because those are the two. That's what my utility takes. Remember my utility? It takes floats. Okay. So I want to parse them, right? That's what I want to do with my controller class. So what I can do is I can start parsing them. So we can kind of make little things. So I can say float x1, a local variable like x1. X1 is equal to, and I could say parse. And if I type in float dot parse float, right? And I can pass in the x1 text field, I can pass that in there, right? Now it says not null. It says, and I want to get text from the field, right? Because get text is the way that I get the text from the text field. Get text and set text, remember? So I want to do the same thing. So float x1 at 2, 3, 4. So there's y1. I'm just going to kind of copy paste here to speed things up because we're going to run out of time. X2, and then Y2, and this would be X. So this is the Y1 text field, X2 text field, and Y2 text field. Oops, there we go. And you can see that I have all of these in there now. Those are the parse methods. Yeah, very, very good. And now that I have all these, let's make my points first. This is a good practice. I don't have to do this because I can use the utility method directly. But I could do something like this. If I want to, maybe I want to use my vectors in some other application in the future, then I want to put in x1 and y1. from my new vector, and I can do a Vector2D 0.2 is equal to a new Vector2D x2, y2. Now I could have done this directly. I could have done this parse float right in here, but I think this would be too messy. So I'm going to make some comments here and say something like, you know, set up variables, which is what I did. Okay. And then once I set up the variables, I want to do my calculations. I can say that a float that is distance, right, is equal to utility.distance, and I'm going to pass in 0.1 and 0.2. And that will be exactly what I did before with my class. I'm just using the objects that we made last day to do this. Okay. And now what I want to do is, if we're good, I want to take that results text field, the result text field, right? So I'm going to say, hey, result text field. I want to set text to my distance, right? Dot toString. Actually it has a toString method built in, but my distance is a float, right? I want to kind of convert my distance to a string. How do I convert a distance to a string? How do I do that? I want to cast it. Could I do this? Is that good enough? Or maybe this? I could do that, right? But it says that it doesn't really like that. How do I do it? How do I convert my float to a string? Guys? Is it string? Passing in the distance? I need to convert it to a string. How do I put it back out there? Do I have a toString method for my distance? I do not, right? Float to distance. How do I do it? Well, it doesn't work, right? Look, distance to string, set text requires a string. Look, so it says if I hover over set text, right, it says it needs a string. That's what it needs, right? So how do I do that? How do I convert a float to a string? I can connect. Oh, absolutely, I can do that. I can say something like, you know, that's easy, plus distance, right? That totally works. That's a trick, if you will. But what's another way of doing this? I want to make this into a string somehow. Is there another way? This would certainly work, though. Here's something I also got to think about here for a second, too. When I instantiate and I do all this crazy work, right? One thing to note is that I'm getting data and I'm trying to parse it, right? That's what I'm trying to do. But unfortunately, what's happening is, what if I don't get data in here at all? That would be really bad. String value of distance. Okay, I like that. Let's do that. String dot and then value of distance. I like that more. String value of distance. Okay, cool. But what happens if I try and run this now? If I press run, so I'm running this up, this whole thing, it does it. So let's say I do 2, and I do 3, and I do 5, and I do 6, and I do calculate, and it does that. Cool. It did the calculation, no error. What if I go back in here and I say calculate? It's going to go bam, it's going to crap out like this, right? And the reason why this craps out is because it can't do the translation, right? So the safe thing to do for me is, anytime I want to do any kind of parsing like this, right, I need to do a try catch. So I'm going to say try, and what I can do is I can put all of this inside of the try, right? And if I cannot, so do all this in here, right? And if I can't do that, then what I want to do is catch an error. There's my exception, where I can type in an exception E. And what I can do instead, for now, in the result label, so the result text field dot set text, And I can put something in here like, please enter, you know, floating point numbers only, or valid numbers. How about this? Valid numbers. Like, it's not really validation in any way, but at least it's going to prevent me from having an error, like from my application crapping out. Let's try this again. So if I did that again, and I kind of ran it, and I put an A in here, or let's say an A, 2A, and calculate, it's going to say, please enter valid numbers. But it's not going to crap out my application, which is what I don't want, right? Okay, I think I'm missing one more button. And the last button I want to add in here is the clear button. Okay, and the clear button is going to clear up the values so I can start over again, right? So let's do that, and that's the last thing we're going to change. So I got to calculate, and I want to add in a clear button, right, as an example, which is because it clears the form, right? And we can do that by simply adding another row. So add row below. And I want to add in a button. So I'll take a button that goes here. And we'll just double click. There it is. And notice that the button itself went down here. We'll just call this, we'll go in here and configure it first. So we'll call this button clear. Or we'll call it reset, actually. Reset might be a better name. Reset. Here's my reset button. I want to cut it, and I want to go to my grid pane, and I want to paste, right? I want to paste into, and it's going to paste into 5, 0. So again, the button, right, that I want to grab, this reset button, I want to look at my layout, and it's going to go at row 5, 0. There's my reset button, okay? Sometimes what we do is we put the calculate and the reset button on the same row, and then the layout might be something we want to play with later on. I don't think the calculate and the reset button should be on top of each other, in my opinion. And maybe we want also a row above, add row above. And the row above could have those same 10, 10, you prefer size. And definitely I want for this one, it's going to be 30, 30, use prefer size, right? And the reset button in the code value, on the code area here, under code, we want the action, the on action to be, instead of on calculate button clicked, right? We don't want that. We want instead, we want it to be the on reset button clicked, right? And we want to save, okay? But there is no on reset button clicked event, right? So how do we add this in? Well, I'm going to go back and put it in. So just like we had this one, we can type it in ourselves. We can say at fxml, that's the decorator. Oops. And so we can add that in. Let's try this in together. Okay, so we'll say add fxml. That's the decorator. And we can say void on reset button. Make sure you spell it properly. Clicked. So I'm actually modifying the controller now instead. We want an action event, just like we've done before. And that is all we need. As long as we have something that looks like this, then we're good to go. It's the same structure as it automatically generated for us up here, but it's an event. On reset button clicked. And our on reset button clicked, what is it going to do? It's going to take each of these fields and reset them. So I want to copy these things for now. You'll see why. Put them in here. And then just erase the stuff. It's easier to destroy than to build. Instead of me typing all that, I'm just going to do one of these. Right? And so here's the thing. If my text field, is there a reset method or a clear? And notice that there is. There's a clear method that'll do it for me, right? So I can just kind of type in clear the entire time. So clear, 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 clears all the text fields, right? And I can do the same thing for my result text field clear, right? So I can do that too. So it clears all those things. And I want to set focus on my text field, my X1 text field. How do I do that? So I want to X1 text field, and I want to set my focus on this thing, right? And that's what I want to do. Otherwise, it's just going to reset, right? So now it says on focus traversable, set focus traversable to true, right? But how do you set focus on this thing? I want to clear it. And if I set focus traversable to true, is that going to do, right? Is that going to do it, right? Because I mean, I'm just looking at the information, right? Let's see if that works. So I saved this, everything's good. And let's see if I can run it now and see what happens. So, okay, so I type in some stuff, and then if I reset, it doesn't really focus in on it, does it? I have to click in there. So it doesn't do the reset, the focus that I want it, right? So what's another way to do it? Can you find out? Do a little bit of research for me. Find out, how do I set the focus? It's an event, really, right? It's like almost like I want to set an event. And if I type in focus, right? Focus is focused, request focus. I mean, you can see that this is something that I can do. Request focus. How about that? We'll request focus and see if that does it instead. I know I'm running overtime, guys. Please bear with me. So again, if I go 2 or 2, and then I do this, and then I reset, yeah, see, now that gives me focus back on here again, which is pretty cool. Okay, let's try this out. So let's say if I type, 20, 30, and then 50, 70, and if I type calculate, you get a number that is reasonable. Get a number that is reasonable. If I reset, and if I type it again, 20, 35, 45, 65, and I click calculate, you get another number that is fairly reasonable. So my calculator kind of works, doesn't it? Right? Well, we can't verify this because we haven't verified our distance function, but so far it looks pretty good. Guys, this is what you need for your in-class exercise, okay? At the very least, okay? And that's all I want you guys to do. This gives us a couple of things that we explored, right? We explored input, very simple validation, not much, by the way, right? And output, right? We talked about, just as a review, what we did, and I did this very quickly at the end, and I do apologize. What we did was we created a simple interface, and we're going to expand on this and improve interfaces like this next week as we continue to work with FXML and JavaFX. We're also going to talk about CSS. We're going to do a bunch of things here to make this much nicer than what this looks like right now, because right now this is a very basic, ugly interface that doesn't look what. But the great thing is, here's the great thing that we've done. We've got input and output. We're able to use our scene builder to save our FXML file inside of our IntelliJ right here. So here's our IntelliJ, and you can see that we created an FXML file. Let's put this up on GitHub so we finish this off. So again, I'm going to go to terminal, and I'm going to clear. I'm going to say git add dot and git commit -m, and we'll say added simple functionality to user interface. Git push. Very simple. Okay. Any questions before we go for the day? And I can recap a little bit. Let me recap just a little bit. So I'm just going to close some of these things off, and I'll talk about the structure before we go one more time, and then I'll just do one more thing as well. Just that way, we're all good, we're all clear. Again, one thing we did was when we first started, we realized in the source file there was two folders, the Java folder and the resources folder. The Java folder had another folder inside of it, which is our package. And inside of there, we have now our two classes, our utility and our Vector2D class we worked with last week. We did 0 modifications on them. And we have a main. The main is our entry point. The main entry point, one thing we modified with the main entry point, remember, was we must use the calculate Vector2D distance FXML. We also modified the scene size to match the FXML file. We made it 600 by 400. I think it's a little big, to be honest, but it's okay for today. Okay. That's the first thing we did. Okay. And then we also made an FXML file that was blank at the beginning. Remember that FXML file? It was just very blank. And what we did was we made this is what the new FXML file looks like now. It's like way better than before, right? What we did was we pointed our scene builder to open up that FXML file, right? And the way we did that was we looked at the path. We copied the path here. When we clicked Open Project, we put that in, and it linked our scene builder with our FXML file. That's what it did. It linked them together. But the FXML file, if you remember at the beginning, was linking to a controller that did not exist, right? The controller that did not exist. So we had to make a controller that matches this, which is what we did up here. We call this the Calculate Vector2D Distance Controller, which is here. The Calculate Vector2D Distance Controller was empty. But what we did to speed things up is FXML the scene builder that can generate it. We can go to View, and we can go to Show Sample Controller Skeleton. And notice it does all of those things. It shows us the sample controller skeleton, which makes it super easy for us to code. We just copy the skeleton into the empty distance controller, and once we've done that, all we did was modify the two functions: the on calculate button clicked and the on reset button clicked event. Once we were able to do those two things, we had functionality. The only thing we did for very simple validation was put everything inside of a try-catch just to make sure that we got proper numbers. We entered numbers in there that were pretty good. I personally think the only thing that I would do different here right now is somehow highlight or create some extra effects, make it red. Like there's a lot of things we can do here to enhance this thing. But again, right now it's pretty simple what we've done. Okay. Questions before we go for the day? I know we ran over time quite a bit, about 17 minutes. Yep, I will go through that with you in a second, Snap. No problem. All right, so let's stop this recording right now. And then remember a couple things. Okay, so a couple of administrative details. First, your assignment 1 details will be published tomorrow with a little video about what's required for week 4. Okay, we're sitting at week 2. It'll give you plenty of time to get everything done. It'll also come with a lab report. Part 2, your lab report for your in-class exercise will also be fully updated by tomorrow afternoon. So you'll also have that, so you can record your little video to submit by Saturday evening, okay? Saturday at midnight, worst case scenario. So those two things, okay? That's a couple of administrative details. Otherwise, that's it for me today. Thank you so much, guys. I'll stop recording on YouTube.